All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's April 1st, 2020. Don't fall for any pranks today. It is April Fool's Day. My name is Rke Terraform, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator. We help startups own their infrastructure in record time by building it for you and then showing you the ropes. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video of the recording to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up with an email so you can share it with your team. If you want to share something in private, just ask and we can temporarily suspend the recording. With that said, let's kick things off. I have a few talking points that came up in the last day or so I want to cover. I think one of them is at least kind of interesting, but makes my head hurt at the same time. But first and foremost, I want to get your questions answered. So anyone on the call today have some question or topic that they'd like to get feedback on from the rest of the community?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Is that
Cool.
Ken?
It's Dale.
Oh, Dale. Sorry. Yeah, it was my highlighting was wrong. All right.
All right. So I've been actually looking at a bit more of the chat ops. I've been looking at two particular bots right now, Obsidian.ai, and that does like some commands with AWS for like monitoring some operation stuff to pull back into the chat room or channel. And the other one, which is BotCube, which actually looks at events in the Kubernetes clusters and actually reports that as well live. So you can actually do like configurations to actually have it monitor specific things.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what, if any at all, is anyone else doing with chat ops and to what level?
So my initial read on that was I thought my guess was we were going to be looking at frameworks for chatbots. Looks like you're looking for like some specific purpose-built bots to solve certain problems in operations. For example, with Kubernetes. Okay, gotcha.
Well, but I'll be interested in hearing about frameworks if you know any.
Well, so we have the chat ops channel. Actually, oops, wrong slide. There we go. And the topic recently just was brought up there. Let's see if any updates happened. So Sheldon was just posting about writing Poshbot plugins, and here's what he wants: something in Python or PowerShell or Go. Supports newer Slack features. Dale, are you thinking Slack, or you like chat ops extends also to other platforms, including GitHub? Are you?
Yeah, right now I'm thinking about the Slack. So like, for example, with the QBot, I can actually make a log query to like a pod and get results there. So I'm thinking like things like that within Slack right now.
Okay. That's good. Easy to add new functions and dialogue without tons of development effort. Either Terraform stack to build Lambda and required resources. Docker-based, simple setup. Any tips? Modern/app dialogue. All right, let's see here. Yeah, well, this is ironic because I asked if anybody doing chat ops stuff would join Office Hours and talk about it. So that's what we're doing right now. So yeah, I don't have much to add to this other than it's something I really want to do more of at Cloud Posse with customer engagements. Anybody have something to add on the chatbot stuff?
I haven't used it, but I've been wanting to. The Stack Storm, and I put a link in the Office Hours channel. And it's more of an orchestration engine, like an event-driven orchestration engine that you can then integrate with a like ChatOps type solution, so you can pass commands to it via Slack or HipChat or whatever people are using.
So one observation I have, having dabbled only a little bit with it, but so I've used CodeFresh with ChatOps, I've used Zapier with ChatOps, I've used GitHub Actions with ChatOps, and one characteristic with all of those is none of them were built from day one with ChatOps in mind. And for ChatOps to work well, my observation has been you want immediate feedback. So like I type a command, I want acknowledgement within a split second that whatever I've done is pending or processing or whatnot. And unless whatever solution you use is a bot from the ground up, a service that is permanently running, you don't get that feedback loop fast enough. So like on Zapier, it works pretty well for ChatOps. It's just that it's like working on a 24 baud modem. You get a response like 1 or 2 seconds later, and it's not that snappy response that I like when I work with purpose-built bots.
There's a Yeoman generator that I saw a while back that bootstraps a chatbot or a Slack bot that you would build yourself that can do whatever you want it to do. That looked interesting. I'm looking for it, but I'm not finding any. I found a couple, but they both are really low traffic. They don't look right. My thing with ChatOps has been, yeah, it's cool, but like, what's the point? Like, is it actually saving you a ton of time? I think it has usefulness in certain situations, but people try to overuse that kind of stuff. Like, if I'm going to be doing slash commands in Slack, I mean, if I'm going to be doing it a ton on my cell phone or something, sure, okay, that makes sense. But if I'm at a computer, I'm going to pull up K9s or whatever,
Yeah.
9.9 times out of 10. The one thing with ChatOps that I've found to be incredibly valuable is PagerDuty.
I think you're also assuming that it's always going to be an ops level person. I mean, you might want to put together a self-service type interface for, restricted actions that people be able to execute.
Yeah. Remediations, basically.
Looking at like pipeline statuses and things like that, it'd be kind of interesting to do that way. I've only ever used the chat features. Like I've always gone first with output to Slack or Teams or something like that before email for any kind of notifications, first of all.
Yeah. I don't consider that ChatOps, though.
That's one-way communication, not quite the same, but.
Right. That's just notifications to Slack.
Yeah.
I don't consider that ChatOps.
No.
Yeah, like one scenario I was looking at was having a team being able to even query their resources for a particular product and even get that their monthly billing based on those running resources. That was one thing I was looking at. The other thing was, as I said, with the bot cube, where they can actually do a deployment and actually get the logs pulling from that into the chat window with the bot based on that particular project or deployment that they did. I'm looking to explore that and see what other functionalities that would make sense for a software engineering team, as well as for the operations team.
Sorry, I was just trying to find something. Has anyone played around with the AWS Chatbot Service?
I've made an attempt. I haven't actually gotten into the weeds with it as yet.
What came of it? Or
I think it's still in beta.
Oh, okay. There was this bot I'd seen a while ago that came out. It's specifically for AWS and CloudWatch. I'm trying to find it. What I liked about it was the interface that they presented, but I can't think of what it was right now.
And it was built specifically for AWS?
It was specifically for AWS and CloudWatch. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, any other questions related to this or any other topic?
Hubot. That's what it was called. That's what I was looking at.
Hubot?
Hubot.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. I saw that one too. It looks like a nice framework for building bots.
Yeah, it's a Yeoman generator for building a Slack bot.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see here. Let me go.
Looked into a couple different things, but have always gravitated towards some kind of web app with a workflow behind it, using like Flowable or Camunda or something.
All right. So on a different topic, yesterday, at least this came across my radar. I'm not sure when it was officially announced. Obviously, they've been working on it for some time. There's a new alternative to Helm. So Helm has been the de facto package manager for Kubernetes. Now Google has come out with their own that has a interface somewhat similar or familiar to anybody who's used Helm. The difference is that it uses Customize under the hood, which is built into kubectl these days. The initial feedback I've seen is, why do we need another package deployment tool for Kubernetes? And I have to say that's somewhat what I feel right now. I mean, everyone's entitled to options and competition is good. It's just that the landscape is littered with so many freaking deployment tools for Kubernetes. I can't even keep them straight in my head anymore.
Are they aiming at users of Helm, or are they aiming at users of Customize, saying here's an easier way to use Customize? Because the first case, you're right. It's like, what, if I'm already using Helm, who cares? But if it's the second case, that makes a lot, because I've had to kind of struggle through Customize, and it can be really complicated.
Do you guys think Helm is a perfect tool, though?
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. What was that?
Do you guys think Helm is a perfect tool, or like perfect enough tool?
Well, I think it solves one of the purposes really well. I like the interface of Helm to install a package that I can have my declarative configuration with my own schema up front to deploy an app. And that this is why Kubernetes, I think, has partially risen to such popularity, because it's so easy to deploy lots and lots of apps to Kubernetes from day one. I think that where it suffers the most is the Helm templating, which is a double-edged sword. Every time they try and move away from Helm templating, people are up in arms with whatever that alternative is. So I think the constant is that people just don't like change.
You talking about like when they talked about going to Lua?
Yeah.
Okay.
or JSONet or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would say I like introductions like something like this, just because I don't think Helm is like solves all the problems great yet. But introducing something like this can help push both of them forward in that direction a lot faster, I think.
That's true. That's true. And I wonder, there's been so many edge cases, so many challenging things to solve with Helm. And it has a bunch of legacy, of course, since it evolved from Helm 2 or Helm 1 to Helm 2 to Helm 3 now. I just wonder if the tool kept can avoid a lot of those landmines that Helm had. Off the top of my head, things like deploying CRDs in Helm was only solved recently, or the ability to have hooks that run as part of the life cycle of deploying your apps, which you need for anything more sophisticated that you want to deploy. Does this handle all those use cases to deploy sophisticated applications, or is it just a basic tool that packages up your YAML manifests in a customized format and distributes and ships those?
They should take a HCL and turn that into a Kubernetes package manager. I think HCL has kind of the sophistication that you would want in
Right.
something like Helm, because Helm is just all YAML, and sometimes it's hard to do what you want to do with just YAML.
So the truth is you can do that today, and modules aren't a bad example of that. I think the biggest problem right now
I am literally working on one right now in Terraform to do the same
Really?
thing. So yeah, as we're talking. So I don't know, man. One over the other. Yeah. So one headache for another. So
Yeah. So actually, so it might actually not work out too bad. I think, since if you're using the raw resources in a Kubernetes module, you'll still get a diff and all of that stuff. The problem has been with the Helm provider for Terraform that you don't get a diff of what's going to change. So it's just like roll the dice every time you.
Oh, I'm not saying use the Helm provider.
I know.
I was saying use like HCL as your configuration language for deploying packages.
For describing the application.
Yeah. Then you can do a little bit more sophisticated things, but still kind of get that markup languagey type configuration.
Yeah.
got some interesting dependency abilities as well that it's easier to grok, you know.
What's your justification, Zach, for going down this route?
In my case, it was because I wanted ephemeral AKS clusters on top of an already existing Terraform deployment. I didn't want to provide keys to, pardon me, to the castle. So for me, it was a complex, another team's complex deployment that they wanted to quickly get into a pipeline. And so I used another tool to export their entire deployment into HCL and then rejiggered it to wrap around a AKS cluster deployment. It's working out pretty well. You know, I'm adding some stuff in there now and doing some extra deployment stuff. The thing is, it's just not as portable as, say, a Helm chart. You know, where you can, you know, then take that same deployment and really. I mean, it is. It's just a different kind of portable, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to make myself into a liar here, but it's just a different kind of work. That's all.
Yeah.
So.
I've been having fun with Rke. There's a Rke Terraform Provider. So I created a Terraform module that creates EC2 instances, runs Rke to spin up a Kubernetes cluster, installs Rancher into it using Helm, and at the end of it, you have a Kubernetes cluster with Rancher installed and a URL that you hit the URL and boom, you're in Rancher and you're ready to go.
That's pretty cool. I'd like to see that, actually.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, if you can do a demo of that sometime, I'm sure. It doesn't have to be the whole process, but at least from Helm and above, I'd like to see it. For what it's worth, I just tried deploying the chart on a DigitalOcean Kubernetes cluster. I didn't get it up and running in 15 minutes. I don't know what my problem was, but I have to come back to it. Anybody else been using like Terraform modules to deploy Kubernetes resources instead of Helm?
I do for my cluster service, cluster-wide services like logging, Prometheus, things like that. Like when you spin up a new cluster, it'll just spin those up with it.
Oh, tell me about the Prometheus. You're deploying Prometheus as native HCL resources?
No, I'm using the Helm provider. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, basically just spinning up, just like cluster services. We have some cluster services that are used by like our deployments as well, that get spun up when the cluster spins up. So it's just a lot easier to just be like, okay, run a Terraform apply and spins up the cluster and installs all those.
What's your pipeline for that? What are you running the Terraform apply in?
Initially I was running it, or I was trying to run it in Terraform Cloud, but they don't have the ability to like run things like Helm with remotely. So I'm using Terraform Cloud to host my state for my clusters, but still running it locally.
Okay. So you have it more or less streamlined, but you don't have it within a pipeline.
Well, I'm hoping that Terraform Cloud will go in the direction of allowing you to use like the Helm provider remotely in the future. But yeah.
Well, you mean like, don't you mean more like having runners deployed in your VPC?
I'm using their SaaS product, the free Terraform Cloud SaaS. So it's
Right.
in their infrastructure.
Right. So a hybrid mode where you can continue to use that, but you need a runner deployed within your VPC that can connect to your resources.
Is that a Terraform Cloud thing? Like, do they already have that?
They don't have the hybrid. No, they have the enterprise
Yeah.
offering where you can fully host Terraform Cloud in-house. I know that this is a very common, frequently requested feature and they are very aware of this requirement and need.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the Terraform Cloud solution is going to be, but if we look at GitLab, if we look at GitHub Actions, if we look at CodeFresh, and we look at probably a few others, they have this option of having a runner that you deploy on-prem. So the runner is simple. You don't have to manage, a dozen microservices and a database to have the runner. You just deploy a single pod or a set of pods with that runner, and you're good to go. Or you deploy it under ECS or something like that.
I can imagine they can even run the runner in their infrastructure, right?
Well, but then you have to
like a container.
establish the peering, right? So I think people are going to be a lot more hesitant to establish peering connections with Terraform Cloud than they would be to have a service running inside their environment that tunnels out to Terraform Cloud. So
I found this on the web for a sec.
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I found workable examples for like actual deployments in Terraform, using Terraform into Kubernetes to be kind of lacking in the documentation. I'll put a blog entry out there pretty soon showing some more relevant, useful items, like actually using a config map that maps into environmental variables and things like that pretty soon. You
have a blog, Zach?
Yeah, it's just a pet project I've been keeping for like 10 years.
Dude, you need, share that in office hours, so I want to check it out.
Oh, sure.
Very cool.
And then also like other sort of nuances are if you're actually going to build the cluster and do a deployment, you really can't modularize, turn it into multiple modules without doing weird multiple states and stuff like that. So it's just nice to have it all in one, building the cluster and doing your deployment as well. So.
Yeah, same. The only thing I've been deploying, like if I'm building the cluster and doing a Helm deployment at the same time, it's going to be something that is a system level resource that I just really need to deploy once and then never touch again.
Yeah.
None of these clusters that I'm deploying are meant to stick around for a long time. So, it'll be metric server or Prometheus or whatever that you deploy it once and then you don't have to worry about state because you're never going to deploy it again is what I'm using the Helm provider for. So that doesn't really bother me that it can't pick up state changes.
Even I haven't had any problem like doing Helm upgrades with Helm, like doing Helm installs with the cluster and then having to redo and apply in the future to upgrade like the Helm chart or anything.
Yeah, it's just that you don't know if you're dropping suddenly the backend database when you're doing that upgrade, right? So yeah. So I mean, if you control the charts, that's pretty good. But maybe the parameter changed upstream in the chart, and you're doing this version upgrade now, and then the parameter went from default to off. So you were depending on the in-cluster MySQL database for Prometheus, for example. I'm not saying this is best practice and not production or anything like that. But then the upstream maintainers decide that, hey, that option wasn't the right option. We should have called it something else. So they changed that option name. You still have in your values YAML that you enabled the MySQL database, but now that does nothing and the default is off. So now you use your Terraform provider, your Terraform code to provision that upgrade for a new version of that chart. The diff looks fine. All it's going to show is I'm going from version 0.4.5 to 0.5.0 or something. And in the process, we deploy it and it nukes the MySQL database. And we wouldn't have even known that was going to happen.
Nice. Yeah, that wasn't something I thought about.
Yeah.
You know, or you deploy a duplicate cluster, exact same chart, same chart version, but they updated the chart without updating their version, and you get different results. As I'm just
Yeah.
saying, so that's happened too, but not quite the same thing. But always self-host if you can. So
That's true.
Not saying that I was ever burned. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Are those problems unique to running Helm with Terraform, or would you run into them anytime you run Helm?
just
No, so we use Helm file, first of all, to call Helm most of the time. And what's nice about Helm file is it integrates directly with Helm diff, which is a plugin for Helm. And when you use Helm diff, you get the plan and apply workflow that you're familiar with Terraform, right? So in Terraform, you do a plan, here's what's going to happen. If you use Helm file with Helm diff, you do a Helm file diff, and here's what's about to happen. And then that would show that the database is going to be destroyed.
Okay.
Referring to my past example. The problem is the Helm provider doesn't do that. And the Helm provider, I mean, I totally get why it doesn't do it. It would be kind of awkward if the Helm provider assumed that you had certain Helm plugins installed in order to operate. It's a very opinionated way to use Helm. There is, though, like the Helm file provider for Terraform, which we have only done like some light tire kicking on, and it more or less does the job.
Yeah, I've been wanting to check out the Helm file provider. I haven't had a chance to yet, but it looks cool.
Yeah, so this is by Mumoshu. So part of what derailed our experiment with using this is that we were doing it together with Terraform Cloud, and going back to what, let me go to office hours, post this here. And going back to what Brian was sharing the other, just a little while ago about his justifications for using Terraform with Helm, is just to streamline the automation of deployments to these clusters. And that's why we wanted to do it as well. But you realize that, like, so on Terraform Cloud, you can't BYOC, you can't bring your own container. And that's a problem when you have lots of binaries that you then depend on. So there's an escape hatch with Terraform Cloud. You can commit the binaries to your repo. But what if you have dozens and dozens of repos? You want to be committing all these binaries to them to be able to do that? And that wasn't that appealing to us in the end. So like if you want to run the provider, you're going to need Helm, the client installed. You're going to need Helm file, the client installed. You're going to need any other plugins for Helm that it depends on, like Helm diff or the SOPs plugin for Helm if you're using that. And I feel like there are other things too. Like, yeah, if you're using Helm file to create the namespace for you using like hooks with kubectl command, now you need to have the kubectl command installed. So it spiraled quickly out of control, all the other binaries we needed to distribute just to get the provider to work. And that's why it's not as, it seemed simple in principle, but in practice it was complicated.
Seems like a strong argument for having a runner.
Yeah. Additionally. Cool. Any other comments related to Kubernetes and deployments with Helm or resources or modules?
I wonder how it would be to create some kind of REST API that you could just hit, pass it whatever data it needs, and then have that be, you know, inside the perimeter.
Mm.
And it would do whatever you needed it to do. And then at that point, Terraform Cloud, all it would do is run a REST call.
Yeah.
Post Terraform apply this stuff.
It makes me curious about something.
And then you get fancy with, you know, whatever kind of responses and stuff that would be needed, and you could have a client or something. I mean, obviously this would be, you know, a big project to put together, but it would be something that you could do kind of separate from whatever efforts HashiCorp is working on.
Yeah. I wanted to refresh my memory on the provider configuration. I basically, I'm wondering if you could just have a provider that represents that runner. I just don't remember what the syntax was for configuring, telling it to do a remote run with Terraform. Anybody familiar with that on the call, so I don't waste a lot of time looking up what that was. Yeah, I'm failing here. I'll keep looking at that on the side here. Any other things somebody would like to add to this conversation?
I've been using Lens all morning. I love it.
Oh, Lens is rad. I love Lens. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
wouldn't recommend it as
it's
your production workflow, but if you're using Kubernetes for local development, it's like that missing IDE.
what why would you not use it for production stuff?
Well, it's not like, I mean, because that's not, you're not supposed to be deploying and modifying resources through ClickUps. So,
Well, sure, but I mean, you know, I've been like this morning. I installed it and I've been using it, and you know, I'm using it the same way I use K9s, right? Except this is a thick client instead of in a terminal.
yeah.
You know, looking at pod logs, you know, looking at services and ingresses, and you know, you can shell into a pod really easily if you need to. You know, I'm not like creating resources using it, but other than that, you're seeing one of the issues I'm having with it right now. Like even if metric server is installed, it's not picking it up. It requires like kubestate metrics, which is older, and Prometheus, which it wants you to install with just a button, and it does, you know, magic to install Prometheus and kubestate metrics, and it's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right. So that's the other thing. So I have those installed on this, but and I don't see where it is right now. Or no, that's different. I can't find where that option was, but I have those configured and set up, but it stopped working for me. So I was using it on the previous version before it went open source, and at some point the metrics just stopped working. But like, so some of the things that are nice. So at a glance, you see all the different kinds of resources that you have. It also has support for your custom resources that are deployed in the cluster, so you can explore those. You can have your access to all your apps. So you can add your own chart. You can add your own chart repositories. So like if your company has it, or like, you know, we have our Cloud Posse chart repository. I added the Rancher one. Added the official Kubernetes stable repository, which is deprecated now, but works still. And then here's everything I've installed with that into the cluster. And you can very easily filter by names.
Hang on, just let it go for a minute. That's okay. Check out that blue exclamation point. That's a feature that I absolutely love. It's amazing. Look at that. It just goes, hey, there's a new version of this chart.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And listen,
was that, Dale?
I've never actually heard of this tool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Cotena, I think, is the company that started it, but they weren't able to survive in the competitive landscape. So they closed, and then just 2 or 3 weeks ago, they finally open sourced their code from the.
So could you then pretty much do a role binding and allow users to use the interface, but like for read-only stuff?
Yeah, totally, you can. So basically, you just have I forget where now, but you have your. It just uses your kube config. Like if we add a cluster here.
It's in cluster settings.
Yeah. So here, you know, going through. So by default, it's just using my default kube config, but I could do custom and then paste that in here.
This is nice.
Yeah.
I'm
in
ready.
it. Like, so if you click that cluster and then go File Cluster Settings.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's going to show my secret in clear text, and don't want to. I can.
No,
Let me.
it will not. I'm in cluster settings right now, and it's not showing any secrets. But you can, yeah, do it in your
I'm
screen.
gonna just double
But all
check.
the way at the bottom of cluster settings, there's a button called User Mode that you can turn on.
Yeah, so
Enables non-admin users to see namespaces.
Yeah, so custom icon, the proxy. Oh, here's where you enable the Prometheus endpoint, and you install the metric server. You install user mode if you need to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a fun way to get started with DigitalOcean, just playing around as a test bed. So go on.
Does using this cause significant load on the API endpoint for Kubernetes? Like if I had like 10 developers using it?
I can't answer necessarily. We haven't tested it. I assume it's going to be more than what you probably have today because nobody's hitting the API endpoint. But so from what I garner, it uses event subscriptions because when things get updated, they get updated here immediately. So I don't think it's polling the APIs. I think it's subscribing to updates.
And only in the active tab, probably.
Yeah, and it's got some cool things with those event subscriptions. Like I have my Raspberry Pi Kubernetes cluster added as a cluster in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
cool.
and it got CPU pressure, and it gave me that nice little red notification bubble on the let's see, do you have annotations turned on? No, you turned them off. On the icon on the top left there.
Yeah.
It says, hey, there's something wrong with this cluster. Go click on it and look at what's wrong with it. And then all the way at the top in your, if you click cluster, then that, yeah. Oh, you got one right there. You have a warning in your cluster. Yeah, so it'll show the warnings. And if you're in another cluster, then the cluster that has the warning will have one of those little red notification bubbles. And I love that.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. And the other nice thing, like anybody using VS Code, this will feel familiar. You have all your tabs and terminals here. So here's like Rancher working on the configuration with that, the ingress config. Let's see, or here's here's the values file for Rancher, I believe, that I was working on installing. And then you select just the namespace here, the name of what you want to call it, the version, click install, and it's that easy to install apps into Kubernetes.
Great, more toys.
Yeah.
I'm glad we talked about this because I did not know it was collecting telemetry and turn that off right away. I'm gonna tell my team to turn that off.
So Andrew, I saw your Raspberry Pi, and I'm actually trying to, well, I actually bought the 4s recently.
Yeah, I wish I had 4s, man. These
Yeah.
3s kind of suck. They only have a gig of RAM, and
Yeah.
it's not quite enough.
And then there's some things with architecture that you can't run in it because it requires ARM64.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can't run.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for introducing me to this tool. This is new to me.
Hey, David, I'm not sure if you've joined before. Welcome to the call.
Thanks. This is my second time on.
Oh, nice. What things are you working on? Anything interesting to share?
Yeah, actually, it kind of came up earlier. I'm working on switching from running Terraform locally to running it in GitHub Actions. And one of the issues I'm hitting is I need to run it via a hosted GitHub runner because some of my GitHub calls hit the EKS internal endpoint.
Yep.
But the GitHub HashiCorp's GitHub Actions run in Docker, and then I'm running the hosted runner in my Kubernetes cluster, which causes a Docker and Docker issue. And it cannot mount the volumes.
That makes total sense. It's like when you run Kubernetes, Jenkins and Kubernetes, you realize how hard it is to do what was very basic things.
So you guys were talking about Terraform Cloud, which maybe want to sort of start to do a tit for tat comparison type thing. But so GitHub Actions is an alternative. You can do that, what you just described, instead of Terraform Cloud. I think some people, including me, are using Atlantis to do a lot of that instead of GitHub Actions. I'm curious, David, if you compared other things, or like, are you doing a lot of other stuff in GitHub Actions, and why did you choose that as opposed to other stuff that you found to do similar things?
Yeah, so we just moved all of our web application CICD into GitHub Actions from Jenkins. So we're trying to go the same direction with our Terraform plan applies. I looked at Atlantis before and I liked it, but I figured since we're using GitHub Actions for everything else, we might as well use that instead of Atlantis. And also, since HashiCorp acquired the primary Atlantis developer, I figure they're probably going to leverage more of his time for enterprise and actions.
They totally are, yeah. Good reasons. Our team uses GoCD and Atlantis, and that division is definitely some of our engineering team is more familiar with one than the other. And when you need to make changes, it can be painful, but we haven't figured out how to get all the features of both in one tool.
Yeah.
And we have nothing in GitHub Actions, even though we want to be using it.
Yeah, it's still very new in some ways, especially with the runners.
So yeah, so David, what's your plan? Are you gonna try and solve this, or are you just gonna wait until you find a solution?
I'm kind of holding off right now. What I'm doing currently is trying to piece apart my state files more so that the things that need to hit internal endpoints, I can just do those later. And right now I'm breaking apart all the things that don't need internal endpoints in a runner to run those through actions.
Yeah, that makes sense. One interesting idea just hit me right now, but I don't know yet. I don't know yet if it's feasible, but playing around with the HTTP proxy environment variable, and I'm guessing the Go SDKs support that. And if they're just using like those SDKs to call like the Kubernetes APIs, then maybe it would go through that proxy. So if you have a proxy that is exposed in some way that you can call externally, it's similar to the runner, except for the runner tunnels out, the proxy would still have to be open. That'd be something to try.
Okay, yeah, we are using an OAuth proxy for some of our other services. I don't know if we could leverage that.
Yeah, so if you have a bearer token that doesn't expire, and then you use that to hit and you make sure. Well, I don't know if you can get that though injected in the requests. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get that for the proxy request.
Yeah, not on the Kubernetes provider.
Yeah. So I know Scalar reverse engineered the Terraform Cloud API. It'd be really interesting to see that as an open source option, so you can run your own Terraform Cloud API that works natively with a remote run functionality.
I haven't heard of that. Scalar?
I haven't. Yeah. I used it years ago, probably 6 or more years ago. At the time, it was pretty good then.
Yes, so Scalar's been around forever. They were your classic multi-cloud management platform. There was another company called RightScale. If you've been at this for a while, you'll be familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good. So they're pivoting, I think, to this. So if you go to scalar.com, SCALR, not SCALYR, which is a totally different company, easily confused.
Oh, the RightScale memories.
Oh, you have RightScale memories, Adam? Wow. That'd be fun to talk war stories sometime.
No.
Nostalgic. I worked with that for years and years back in 2008.
I got a question that maybe people can answer. Has anyone had successful experience with doing a cloud migration, but running a VM inside a container. I know it sounds not like something that you wouldn't necessarily want to do, but I've got one team that's begging me to help them with, we want to run a VM inside a container. We found this Rancher VM product.
Yeah, I was gonna say
but it hasn't been touched in over a year.
Oh yeah.
The last blog post about it was in like 2016, and I'm thinking this is just a terrible idea all the way around. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody has done it and goes, nah, it works fine. But
can you describe why they want to?
They want to just straight up lift and shift into Kubernetes. Like they don't even want to just create Docker images. They want to actually keep using their VMs for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Sounds like Inception.
Also, you can imagine like if a vendor comes to you, like here's our proprietary image. You can run this, but spin up your own VMware cluster, yada 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 yada, or just package that in a container and deploy to your existing platform. Sounds kind of cool if you can get it to work. I was totally like scratching my head the first time I heard this from Shen at Rancher that this was his passion project, building this ability to run containers inside of run VMs inside of a container. And then when it was explained to me as this way to lift and shift faster and using Docker as a distribution mechanism, it made a lot of sense to me.
Sounds like they're trying to get a free lunch though. Like it just doesn't seem like that would really end up working out for you long term. Like I can't imagine that would be without its issues.
I mean, the way I tried to frame it was, what kind of car do you drive? Well, I drive, a Chevy Malibu or whatever. All right, you want an electric car. Are you going to A, convert your Chevy Malibu to electric, or B, go buy a Tesla Model 3 or whatever? Which one's the path of least resistance here?
Yeah.
How about if I tow my Chevy Malibu with the Tesla Model 3?
Hey, the diesel to biodiesels, those are all the rage. Definitely the way to go. Much cheaper. Don't need to buy a new biodiesel car.
Yeah, that's analogous.
I can't find it, but there were a bunch of folks in Boston at DevConf, which is basically Red Hat's cool thing, talking about virtual machines and containers, and there are several other tools for you to like copy paste out of certain AMI formats or certain image formats out of VMware products into Red Hat Kubernetes products and things like that. But I don't remember it because it was too long ago.
That would be an interesting approach. Like, couldn't you just export the VMware image into a format that would be compatible with a container? I mean, you wouldn't have maybe the ability to do all the kernel level stuff if it needs that, or if you need to run Windows, for example.
Has anyone had a good amount of experience yet with running Kubernetes with Windows nodes and Windows containers?
Yeah, I'd love to hear someone's experience on that.
I'm not going to touch it.
What'd you say, Dale?
No, I said I wouldn't touch it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's got, first level support now. So, I mean, if you need to run Windows workloads, it sounds like a decent option. It's just, you're one of the things that's so nice about Kubernetes is that you got, thousands, tens of thousands of people doing exactly the same thing that you want to do. So there's tons of information out there for you to find. You're not blazing your own trail. Someone's already done it somewhere and talked about it on Stack Overflow or Medium or whatever. But the new stuff that's coming out, like Windows containers on Kubernetes with Windows nodes, is you're going to kind of blaze your own trail because no one's done it yet. And if you're Alex Ellis or Kelsey Hightower or something, awesome, write a kick-ass blog post about it. But if you're, Joe 9 to 5 at some company, you're having a hard time.
I think there's also, at least like when I started looking at just Windows with Docker in general. A couple of years ago, is there's a limitation via licensing, right? I mean, free open source stuff is pretty easy to just distribute, and then you had the Windows Docker images that came out with the base Nano Windows 10 stuff, but like nobody was building anything on top of it because you didn't really understand what the distribution limitations were.
Well, this is Blaze. I think that's what Azure is effectively doing, is they're running, but now obviously they can do it because they've got the keys to the castle.
So I think you get some benefits for running in Azure, but I don't know, man. Like I've looked at the documentation, having worked in Azure for the last year on AKS, the documentation is lacking for doing Windows nodes. And doing looking into the EKS side, it was surprising how much more documentation there was on running like Windows worker nodes in EKS than there was in AKS. But.
Yeah, I mean, when you start pulling back the layers, shit gets complicated really fast. Even on Linux Kubernetes, it's like, all right, what network layer are you running? Are you running Flannel? Are you running Canal? Are you running, and it's like, you got to start going through all that. And then, all that same kind of problems are going to be in Windows too, except it's going to be all new problems that nobody's seen before.
Well, and Windows has all sorts of amusing, like intermediate dependencies on Active Directory that you end up running into when you least expect it. Full disclosure, I've got a Windows Data Center 2016 server in my garage that, and by the way, if anybody's interested, you can get the licenses for them really cheap on eBay.
Is that heating your house?
Yeah, yeah. It's powered off because, to be honest, it's such a fucking nightmare to do anything. I mean, the SSHD daemon, getting that to work was like a week of just like yak shaving. And now admittedly, maybe if I was like a PowerShell guru or something and I had, decades of scripts stored somewhere, but you're just walking in like, average asshole off the street, trying to like start it up. Oh man, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like Andrew was saying, it's like nested onion layers of like security. Like, oh, you wanted to read that. Sorry, you have to, add a policy for this, add a policy for that. Oh, you want to also copy it? Oh, excuse me.
Well, in my experience, so I've had a lot of people ask me about running Windows containers, and I said, are your developers ready to have containerized workloads, in a small footprint container?
Right.
And most places aren't ready for it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're not using the most recent .NET. They're still using .NET 2. In some places. So I mean, it's not. People are asking for it, but I just question how much they're ready for it. So
and they're not. I mean, well, it's people who want to lift and shift. But the buzzwords in the industry right now are Kubernetes and containers. So they have this .NET framework application that only runs in Windows, and it's like, how do we do this? And the one time I've had to do it, I ended up using Azure Service Fabric, and it worked okay. Like, it was a single container that was able to scale horizontally, and that was it. Like, and it was still a pain in the ass.
Hey, a 20 gig container is still a container.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a container. It's still, you can push it to a Docker registry. You can, it wasn't Kubernetes. It was Azure Service Fabric, which now that it's open sourced, well, I mean, Kubernetes, now that Kubernetes runs Windows, I think Azure Service Fabric is going to go away. But yeah, that was my one experience with Windows containers.
I will avoid these as long as I possibly can.
I mean, my recommendation ever since then has been convert your app to .NET Core and run it in a Linux container. Like,
And get over that
I've
first
done
hurdle,
that.
and then we'll talk.
Yeah,
you know?
I've done that half a dozen times. Most of the time, it's 10 lines, in the project config and a new compile target, and you're basically done. I mean,
I am not avoiding Windows workloads on Kubernetes. The moment it's able to be done easily, I'm absolutely going to do it. I want to do everything declaratively from now on if I can, including Windows crap. So, but it's just not that easy to do now. So.
Sorry.
hey, I got a cool idea, Eric.
What
if we started inviting representatives from different companies?
Oh, totally want to do that. It's actually on my plan. I would love to.
Wouldn't it be great if we were talking about Windows containers and had somebody from Azure,
Totally would love that,
talking
yeah.
to us?
You sure you want to invite them?
Well,
they can usually hold their own. I've spoken with them before.
Oh yeah,
They get people with thick skin for a reason.
Or like we spent 45 minutes talking about Terraform Cloud. Let's get somebody from HashiCorp. Shoot them an invite and say, hey, we're going to be talking about Terraform Cloud. You want to come?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Sometimes, these conversations are very fluid. Like there were other talking points, but we follow those threads and we end up on Terraform Cloud, right? So I found that thing that what I wanted to point out was the provider configuration for Terraform Enterprise is just a block like any other provider like this. So it'd be really rad if somebody just reverse engineered that as an open source protocol that you could deploy on-prem then. So you define a provider for your, for your open source Terraform runners. And this is
interesting because the providers all get loaded at the same time, right? And you would need that runner to already be running the init that loads the providers. I wonder how they make that work.
Well, so for them, this is a hosted solution. So it's going to be Terraform Cloud, or it's going to be the Terraform on-prem enterprise, which you deploy. Maybe you deploy that with CloudFormation or something, right? It's an axiom. You assume it exists.
Okay.
But now that you have that there, then you can do whatever you want. So. All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps things up for today then. Let's see if we...
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Any chance I can drop... So I posted it in the office hours a month ago, but I recently got pulled into helping out organize because I had a gigabit internet connection and was friends with the organizers as a backup hosting. But we moved a conference that I mentioned last month called Observe IO into virtual format, which downsides really confusing logistics, no in-person stuff, but upsides, Zoom doesn't really have a cap on the number of people who can join a conference, unlike a venue that we pay for in expensive Boston. So I have it's like a $50 ticket is what we've been charging, but I can post a 100% off coupon link thing in here or wherever you want me to post it.
Yeah, post it in office hours, and I'll promote it in the announcements channel afterwards. I appreciate that, Adam. That sounds pretty cool. I think people are really taking advantage of all the online resources now to learn and level up.
Yeah, it's Monday. We have some cool speakers. It's mostly or entirely tied to the OpenTel CNCF project. But I'm excited to see how it turns out.
So this was the link. I think you shared it with me. This Observe 2020 IO link.
Yes.
Yeah,
right. That's what I just posted in there.
Okay.
I think it sends you to a page that has a link to the Eventbrite thing, and if you sign up via Eventbrite, then you'll get an email with like the Slack invite and the Zoom webinar invite. And we have all the speakers planning to do live presentations, and if anything goes wrong, they've recorded their presentations. I've never run a virtual conference before, but we'll figure it out. It's gonna be a little scrappy and should be good.
Sounds like you covered your bases though with the backup recordings. That's nice.
Well, thanks for the fun tools. I have been digging into Lens a bunch. Also didn't know about it until today.
Oh, nice. Yeah, glad that came up. I was going to bring it up earlier, but then literally as I got excited about it, like 1 week later, the company announces they're shuttering the doors. So that's now not the case anymore. It's back to open source.
I wonder what, if anything, will happen with the Kubernetes distribution. Pharos.
Was that?
It was also open sourced.
Hmm.
I've never heard of it, and I've been doing this stuff for like 2 years now. Yeah, Contena Pharos was their Kubernetes distribution.
Yeah. There's that's also hurting my head, all the number of Kubernetes-based distributions out there. It's going to be a minefield of littered with dead distributions, I think. All right.
I'm enjoying the way DoD is positioning all of that. They're basically saying, I don't care what distribution you use, but you have to use CNCF compliant stuff, which means you have to use the lowest common denominator stuff. If you're running OpenShift, I don't care, that's fine, but you can't use OpenShift specific stuff. You have to use Kubernetes stuff that can run in any cluster.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that philosophy a lot.
Yeah, I saw someone mention SuiteOps just this week somewhere that oh yeah, I saw it was for Helm file. So somebody was saying that, can we please get Helm file into CNCF, because our company will only use projects that are CNCF certified or incubated. So, all right, well, we got to wrap things up. It's the end of the hour here. I know people got to go to their next meeting, so I appreciate everyone for participating. It was a great conversation, learned a lot. Remember to register for our weekly office hours. If you haven't already, go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. A recording of this call is going to be posted in the office hours channel and syndicated to our podcast at podcast.cloudposse.com. So if you miss these, you can always keep up to what we're talking about. See you guys next week, same time, same place.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.